you talking about? Oh, the plate is like this big. You got the batters like
Softball fanatics. You guys are crazy for softball. I'm crazy for you guys. And guess who else we're all crazy for? Ches Severs, the one and only. There she is. I'm still holding the fort down.
What's up, Sarah?
I had her in studio one day, and then, I don't.
Did you get a haircut?
We don't need to talk about it. Nobody's interested in my hair. Nobody's interested in my hair. I may have gotten a haircut. I don't know.
No, but congratulations.
I may or may not have gotten a haircut. I can't confirm. I can't confirm either way.
That should be rolling on the bottom ticker. Sarah got a haircut.
Hey, our production people might make that happen real soon. Yes, but the one and only Ches is here. How was your weekend, Ches?
It was solid. We had a crazy thunderstorm on Friday.
Crazy. I slept terribly.
I just watched it, and then it was pretty chill. Hung out with some friends, my quarantine, that's what I call them. We had a get together where we dressed up. We're just like trying to have fun with this whole thing.
Should I be offended that
but it was cool.
Should I be offended that I'm not part of your quarantine?
Well, we can't go inviting everybody.
We'll talk about it.
But
later.
yeah, okay.
We'll discuss this.
All right.
We'll discuss this off.
All right. Look. Okay. Well, we brought Robby Wilson back from NSR to discuss all there is to know about recruiting and all the NCAA changes. Robby, how are you?
Exhausted.
He must have had a really busy weekend. He wasn't hanging out with his quarantine over the weekend. What has you so exhausted, Robby?
I was slowly anticipating this entire weekend. I was anticipating just all of a sudden finding out that, this has been the one time where all these rules have been implemented, but then there's been so many little bitty misconceptions in it. So I was anticipating Monday morning being a Monday morning and having a couple of things pop up, and knock on wood, it has not happened today yet. So knock on wood.
Well, maybe after this show we can make it happen for you.
It's all good stuff.
Well, yeah. Well, Robby, we had been talking over the past couple of weeks about the decision that the NCAA could make in terms of pushing back dead period, and then it happened. What have you seen from the club perspective? There's been all kinds of comments flying around on Facebook. What do you see as kind of the biggest concern with the deadline being pushed back to June 30th?
The unknown, people making decisions before knowing the concrete fact. And what I mean by that, and I could elaborate on each one of them if we wanted to, and I know y'all seen it too, but people all of a sudden, I'm talking about 16 gold teams that, are nationally ranked that turn around and pull out of the rest of their summer schedule and tell them, hey, we're going to play a couple of round robins, but we're going to pull out of all of these things. And, so then, the girls that I have on the team are turning around and coming back to me, hey, what am I supposed to be doing? And between that and then, the misconceptions about the camps, which I'm sure y'all are going to talk about here in a little bit, with who can and can't work what camp and to what extent and where, and, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of like it's kind of like in the general public, if I turn around and say one, or somebody turns around and says one thing, and then it goes to the next person, by the time it makes it to one of those private groups on social media, all of a sudden, you would think that it's like, where's Waldo? I'm trying to find the real truth.
It's a game of telephone, essentially.
Oh,
and you know what?
Sarah, you read my mind.
Right? Instead of, I'll take this one, Ches. Great ideas, great minds. It's a game of telephone. And instead of letting it go through all those people, we're going to go right to the source. You're the source. You're the telephone. So that's what we're going to try to do today with you, at least, and help quell some of the misinformation that might be out there, and help people make informed decisions as much as they can.
I appreciate that. Yeah,
So Robby, when when some of your athletes are coming to you and asking, for a plan, essentially, how do you kind of like lay out the groundwork for good decision making in terms of, do I go and play in these tournaments or leagues? Because I'm sure some of them are like, well, my team's not competing in this, but I can get picked up for that team. What's the deal with college camps? What's the deal with camps that aren't held on the university's site? What are you telling them?
One of the biggest things, like I've told the rest of them, and I mean this goes whether it's one of my prospects or it's just the general public, is what you have to think about is regardless of whether this piece of it is true or this piece of it is true. And right now, what do we know? We know that the D2s at the end of this month, the D2s will switch to a quiet period, but the D1 dead period extends through the rest of June. And we know that May 27th they're going to reconvene to confirm whether or not they're going to extend it further than that. Regardless of which way they do end up going, you know that that the D2 is going to go to a dead period at the end of the month, and D1 has been extended as far as the dead period goes. Inevitably, the coaches are still going to need to recruit. So if you break it down to a very simple, okay, if the coaches, no matter what, and when we talk about coaches, obviously we're talking about D1, D2. D3 is going to have no restriction. NAI is going to have no restriction. JUCO is going to have no restriction, with the exception of their own university telling them that they do. But if they're not, the D1 and D2 coaches are still going to need to recruit during the summer. And so inevitably, they're still going to want to see you play. Now, why you would pull your entire team out of a tournament, or why I've had certain travel coaches call me and ask me how they should handle the conversation with their parents, their athletes' parents, because the parents have turned around and started to go over them. Hey, if the coaches can't come, why are we still going all the way over here? Why are we still doing this? And I get it. It's a feasibility thing. But inevitably, you're still going to need to play. And here's what I mean by that, because inevitably, they're going to need to recruit. And if you're going to play, the coaches are going to want to know you're going to play. Make one thing work for you 6 different ways. So whether the coaches can be there or whether they can't, I know just from this weekend alone, this weekend I was supposed to go to Oklahoma to scout, for example, because it was one of the places where it had opened up and there were some really good gold teams that were going to be competing and knocking off for us. And I made the last minute decision because of the high chance of rain not to go. But here's what I do know. I ended up talking to several of my uncommitted kids that were going to be there and talking to their parents and getting them to understand about streaming, whether they were going to be streaming on Facebook or whether they were going to be doing something else, to get them to stream. Saturday and Sunday, I ended up spending a large majority of my time going back and forth with college coaches that were trying to watch the stream and trying to identify other kids that were out there doing different things. So just this weekend alone, Saturday and Sunday, between 10 girls, I bet there was like 25 coaches that were messaging pretty consistently trying to watch these kids. So, and that was just the unplanned weekend. Now imagine these other weekends, like beginning of June when Flo is streaming, to the Tulsa Invite, for example, and these other ones that are pre-planned. You're going to have hundreds and hundreds of coaches that are going to want to be watching these kids. And so trying to pull out of these tournaments all of a sudden, you're hurting your kids worse than what is really necessary. We could be talking about just a paper cut, but pulling out of that tournament is going to make it a gash. So even if the coach doesn't end up being able to watch your particular stream and watch that particular play, the beauty of all of the other streams and all the other video period is you have the video later on to turn around and send it to the coaches that didn't catch it live. And so pulling out of the tournaments, I would say is probably the mistake number one as far as what I've been telling my kids. If something happens and their team does completely pull out of a tournament, or they do decide to pull out of some of the important ones, as soon as they clear it with their travel coach, I'm trying to get them picked up on a different team.
Do you see that decision making as kind of like just a panicked decision overall? And I understand there's some other factors that go into it, right? With parents who have had to work from home. Some of them have to go back to work to their offices now. Do you see that playing a part in this making, or do you feel like it's more so made out of panic?
Everybody keeps talking about the feasibility aspect, and the thing about it is, a lot of that stuff. Yeah, there is some of them that we've had to alter certain, alter certain things that they're going to be doing. But trust me, there's no shortage on most of those teams. Like I've got a couple of girls that they're going to travel with other parents and other kids on their team, and they're going to room with them. And there's always a way. The ones that I'm seeing pulling out and everything are you have those I don't know exactly how you want me to word it, trying to walk the fine line on it, but the people who are afraid of public failure. So one of the scariest things as the head coach of a team is, if I take my team and I tell my parents, trust me, trust in me, I'm going to take you in this direction and it's going to be the best thing for all your kids, and then it does turn out to be the wrong thing, knowing the type of blowback that would end up happening, where it's the same thing, and I hate to compare it to this, but every year from March, April, and May, sometimes in February, but most of the time March, April, and May, when I start searching high and deep looking for uncommitted seniors, because all of a sudden we've had 100 or 200 schools turn around and pop up and say, hey, Robby, please tell me you got an uncommitted kid. 99% of uncommitted seniors that I end up finding under a rock, over in Butte, Montana or something, they end up telling me, oh, I've decided not to play college ball. I got tired of doing everything for so long and not hearing anything back, so I've removed myself. The sad thing is, she removed herself because she did not want to go all the way through and not be recruited. Where that kid was fully capable. And I'm talking about high caliber kids. And so it's the way, I guess, the human mind, I'm not a psychologist or anything, but it's the way the human mind goes. And a lot of these other travel coaches that have called me and told me, hey, not just the 2 kids or 3 kids that you have on my team, but my other kids are going to be looking for a team. I pulled our team completely out of these events. And then when I asked why, to be honest, Robby, I didn't want to take a chance of having to deal with blowback at the end of the summer if I made wrong decisions on where we were going and how we were doing it. So I just gave them free reign. So the
Sounds
showcases
like
are going to be important. You said it, I didn't.
Well, it's like, we're in an unprecedented situation, and how to navigate that. There's no manual for what the right way but for some reason, everybody has an answer for the wrong way. What you said kind of like brought me to a bigger question. Do you see a bigger fallout with athletes just quitting sports altogether? Not just softball, but obviously, like, all sports have suffered the consequences of having their seasons canceled. Do you see that happening?
I think not necessarily during the summer. I think the summer could potentially be the straw that breaks the camel's back. If the summer does not transpire, the girls, their love and passion for it has taken them through. I mean, let's be honest, this 90-day, maybe a longer, whirlwind up till now, and we're going to be talking. The summer's going to happen, but it's going to happen in a much less, of a norm fashion. If all these little elements all of a sudden start to, and I know there's going to be naysayers that say, if you got love and passion for it, nothing's going to steer you away from it. If you deal with enough teenage girls like I do, I can tell you, you can love something as much as humanly possible, but you can only deal with, let's just say, poop. You can only deal with poop for so long. And trying to keep it politically correct, but I can tell you right now, there's about once a day, once every other day, one of my prospects that ends up calling, and it ends up being the prospect asking the questions, not her parents, that end up asking, how long do you think this is going to last like this? How do you think everything's going to be back to normal in the fall? And it's not that they're concerned about, they're asking a recruiting question. It's that you can tell they're kind of down in the dumps with how things are, and I can tell. I think most girls got this level of ball right now are in that stage where they need some excitement this summer. They need to get back to the team. I know this weekend, and I'm sure y'all saw it from social media too, the number of pictures and videos that I saw of girls that, are bawling their eyes out, because they got to see their friends that they haven't got to see in, 2-3 months and everything. And I know some people were talking about how silly it was, but I get it. I've been talking to those kids behind the scenes anyways. I know how horrible they felt. So, yeah, I do. If the summer doesn't go right, the fall, I think we could see a fall off, being honest with you.
Yeah, I think it's human nature to have uncertainty be stressful, and there's uncertainty in every aspect of a lot of people's lives, and softball is an enormous part of most of these girls' lives right now, and to have something be uncertain in that big of a part of their life, I'm sure it's stressful, and I'm sure they're having to weigh decisions about that part of their life just like they are with other parts of their life. So it makes sense, and so I'm curious what your suggestions are to these kids and their parents, and I'm curious how you think the summer should be going for these kids.
Talking to me or talking to Chess?
Oh, I don't want to hear what Chess has to say. I have to listen to Chess all the time. Oh. You're my man, Robby. I want to hear what you have to say.
Being honest,
I have some thoughts too. But Robby, you go first.
I've been telling the rest of the girls, the hardest thing is publicly, I'm in a very tough position, because on one hand, obviously without saying any names, I've had many of conversations with my prospects over the last couple of months where they are in tears, and even where they are not telling mom and dad that they're in tears, because they don't want them to think that they're not in love with it, but they're just stressing out, and they're, Coach Robby, how do I handle this? My team's talking about not doing this and this, and I'm going to have to find another team, and I'm not, how do I handle it with the coaches? And, it's stress upon stress and upon stress, and they're handling it. But, they also, you think about it, they've all been locked up. They also haven't had an avenue to just let it go and just say what all's on their chest and what's all on their brain. And so whenever they turn around and call me, and within 5 minutes, they're like, Coach Robby, can I talk to you? Can anybody else hear me? Well, no. The minute I say no, and it's like I can hear the tears through their voice, and it's the stress that's going on. And as far as advising them on what I've had to tell them, being honest, I've had to remind them, yes, softball is a team sport, and yes, your team is something, but for especially the next 60 days, if not the remainder of this year, I need you to think a little bit selfishly, and not necessarily selfishly as in you're going to spite somebody else to benefit yourself, but telling them, hey, if your team does decide to pull out of this or that, don't throw a fit. You don't go to the coach. What you need to see that as is that's now an open weekend, and you need to go straight to your coach and ask, hey, Coach, I'm not sure if I'll be picking up with somebody else or if I would be going to a camp, but I wanted to clear it with you. Is there anything I can and cannot do, within our team rules? And then just don't worry about how it affects the team. And that sounds horrible, but let your coach make their decisions, and whatever decisions they make. If they decide to pull out for half of the tournaments that you're playing this summer, see that as half of your weekends are open. And now you all of a sudden have the chance to either one, pick up, or two, go to other camps. And camps are probably going to be the trickiest thing for girls to figure out this summer. Because, the D1s, it's not going to happen, and then all of a sudden with the D2s, they're going to be in a quiet period. So, during the summer or during the first month of June, as of right now, assuming the 27th doesn't change anything, the D2s can have their camps, on their campus. And just so everybody knows, there was this up and down, people trying to figure out, can the D2s go work camps off of their campus? That was probably one of the top arguments that I saw people having on social media. And the answer is yes, they can. They can't stay and recruit that event. Mm-hmm. And I use Tulsa Invite, for example. Which, the Tulsa Invite, y'all are obviously familiar with.
Has the camp. Yeah.
And and I talked to several of the D2 coaches. Now, here's what could happen is the university of that school does have the ability to turn around and tell them no. But I talked to several D2 coaches and then several ADs and several of their compliance. And what I finally ended up doing was going to one of the D2 coaches that are on the D2 board and ended up, bringing it straight to him and asking him, hey, don't let me look like a fool publicly, and he ended up saying, hey, and ended up confirming 3 different times that they can. The trick to it being, if they are being hired to go work that camp, they can go work that camp. They just have to make sure that they do not stay to recruit that event that's tied to that camp. So in terms of, like Tulsa Invite, the D2 coaches are still going to be there at that camp. They're not going to be at the event. But trust me, if they're there at that camp and they turn around and they find somebody that really took their eye, do you not think that they're going to figure out when your team is streaming? They're going to be watching it on FloSoftball after that. So,
good advice. What are your thoughts on these multiple regional leagues popping up? You've got the Texas Fast Pitch League, Hearts of America Elite Fast Pitch League, and then now the Conference of the South League. What are your thoughts on these new club regions putting together their own softball leagues?
It has potential. Here's the one. One of the things that I was talking about last week was I could speak a whole lot more deeply on the TFL as far as the TFL itself than I could some of the other ones that have popped up at that time. Of course, now I feel a whole lot better about it, but I could speak a whole lot more deeply, because if there was one thing that I knew, it was I had respect for and a good relationship with a lot of the other guys that were working through the TFL. But if there was one thing I knew about Scott Smith, it was in my career in softball and everything that I've ever done with him or in coordination with him. The guy is an innovator. He does not let, if there is one roadblock, he doesn't stop. I love working with him because he kind of challenges my limits a little bit. And he always follows through with stuff. He doesn't start anything that he can't finish. And so that's why our relationship has been so great. And TFL, everything was right. And again, not saying that these other ones won't be. Everything worked with the way the TFL, the Texas Fast Pitch League, had planned, because it was Texas teams and it was in the way that they had it set up before they announced the other regions and the other ones. What my concern was all of those guys had decided they were going to save money this year, because, a lot of the people in there, in a lot of their organizations, their parents work in the oil field and work in these other things that all of a sudden had been furloughed or whatever the case was. And so feasibility of traveling to PGF in Colorado and everything that's where the birth of this really happened. That's where the baby was birthed. And so then the TFL, has a perfect solution for this year. But then, one of the things that they did point out to us, and again, this is, talking with the TFL before the other ones came about, one of the things that they did point out to us was, next year when everything's back to norm, we'll still go to PGF, we'll still go to Colorado, we'll still do this and this. And so then, of course, the brainchild, my brain starts working in the sense that, that also means that you're going to have during the week this and this, and then leading up to that weekend, then you're going somewhere else. And so, 2.5, 3 years ago, when the D1 rules changed, the whole point was overuse injuries and mental fatigue, where they were coming in burned out. And we changed the D1 rules. That was, everybody else thinks it was to prevent other stuff. Y'all both know too. That was the two main things that the D1 coaches wanted to accomplish. Well, now all of a sudden, not this year, but next year, if these leagues and everything exist, that means playing during the week, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're turning around and leaving for the weekend. We're back to the same issue. So I'm sure Scott
maybe
has
even
a plan
worse
for it. And yeah, I've seen the Gulf Coast League, the Heart of America, and there's good guys, and the guys that I know and respect in those regions are the ones running that stuff. I think if they don't uniform or unify, because everything seems unified, but if you don't unify really quickly, right now there's several tribes that are going to politely coordinate with each other. But, if they don't unify in the sense of having a governing board and everything, I could see it going haywire. There's some of those regional leagues that are going to have 7 different states listed. So it's, no longer necessarily a state necessity thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're definitely solving for the short-term issue of so this summer travel ball is getting affected one way or the other, but there's a long-term, like you mentioned, what happens next summer or the following summer when things are back to normal, and the regular big, it's a short-term solution and they're having to solve for it, but I think there's also needs to be some thought given to the long-term and how that fits in, right? So for sure, I'd like to get a sense of what you think will happen with the dead period. Do you think it's going to get extended further when they meet on May 27th?
So yes, if I was trying to get really quick in, here's the other thing. The one thing that I've always kind of heard, but it's become more public, and I've heard it more often since all this stuff has transpired, is a lot more coaches have kind of clarified in the sense of the way that the NCAA kind of works, in that they almost never come out of left field and boom, here's something that's going to make all of you mad and make you hate us. They always throw something out there saying, hey, there's a possibility that we could do this, so y'all be mad at us for the next 10 to 14 days, and we won't announce it. We're going to make, and everybody thinks that it's that they're considering it and they're going to vote on this time. But what it is by the time that 10 to 14 days transpires, not only have they had the amount of time to let you digest it a little bit so it's less of a culture shock, but they've also been able to at least get some kind of the feedback to figure out what's going to be the general public's biggest issues so that we can try to address them ahead of time. And the coaches' issues so that we can try to address them ahead of time. So long story short, that's what a lot of coaches have told me. Like before this extension happened, literally for like 3 days straight, I know several of my scouts were facilitating, but I know like me and Mike would be texting until 1 and 2 in the morning and then turn around 5, 6 in the morning, and starting, and it was several days in a row where we were trying to make sure that we stayed completely on top of it. And part of it being because this coach was saying this and this coach was saying that. But then we ended up getting to the point where there were several coaches that ended up coming really clean and saying, hey, just a heads up, our athletic director, our compliance has already told us that, this is a done deal. It's something that's going to happen, and basically they're just soft rolling it out. And so now those same coaches are telling us that the rest of the coaches, that their athletic directors and their compliance has already told them, hey, as far as D1 coaches go, and it being extended past, they've already told them, hey, it's not just going to be June, the end of June. It's going to be extended all the way through the summer. So it's hope for the still, regardless, not just with them, but with the D2s too. It's hope for the best, plan for the worst. I think that's part of where the chaos comes from. So at first you had D1 and D2 that had a lot of the same stuff going on, and then you had D3 and NAIA and JUCO. Well, now all of a sudden D1 and D2 are also a little bit different than D3 and NAIA and JUCO. So it is a collective confusion for the general public.
Right. Sounds like our states and government.
Yeah.
Well, always appreciate your insight, Robby. If you can leave people with maybe the one piece of advice going forward with this, what would it be if it's for a player?
Don't back out. Don't go backwards. Don't pause. Actually, what you need to do is put your foot on the accelerator a little bit more, but be ready to steer left or right really quickly. The girls that are ready to pivot as opposed to stop are the ones that are going to hurdle over everybody else.
Well said.
Sounds like Flo. Sarah.
Well said. I don't think we have anything else to say. I can't top that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I definitely appreciate y'all having me on.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, Robby.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate you. You're doing God's work, Robby. All right.
Good stuff.
Good stuff from Robby. Man, so he's just always. He's just a phenomenal resource, I think, for the kids and the parents who are out there trying to pivot, like you said, and they're scratching their head.
It's a beast to keep up with. Yeah. It is literally changing week to week, and like sometimes I see news go out at 9 p.m. and I'm like, about to go to sleep.
Yeah. And then can you imagine being a parent who has, a job to worry about, and other kids think, like, could you imagine trying to navigate that? No. So it's great that Robby and people like Robby out there exist and are providing resources to families right now. But I think he left us with, I think it was very well spoken what he said at the end. Like, be ready to pivot, be proactive, and be nimble.
Absolutely. Well, this week at Flow, we've got more Chess Show podcast with Francesca Anea Brewy. She represents Blast Motion. She's also a Florida alum. Sarah Gronewagen. We've got the Citrus Classic rebroadcast going, and then some FloSoftball 24/7. And we have a treat for you guys. It's going to be USA all day for Memorial Weekend, just for you guys. So we'll rebroadcast all of the USA games on FloSoftball.
I mean, what more could you want? There's softball, and then there's USA softball, Memorial Day. I think it's great. Everybody, enjoy FloSoftball. Enjoy what we have to offer, and we will see you again very soon.